way back when, we made a decision that we wanted to make PepsiCo the defining corporation of the 21st century. When people looked back and said, what were the great companies of the 21st century, we wanted PepsiCo to be among that list. You don't become a defining company just because you delivered good financials. You become a defining company because you did something much more than that. And to us, it was performance with purpose. And performance with purpose is something that was a long journey. And every year, you added a new layer of richness and complexity to this whole notion of purpose. So if I hadn't gotten tired after about 10 or 11 years, I would have done this for 25 years because I really wanted to build in purpose into PepsiCo in a way that nobody could change it. Think about what PepsiCo could do for society rather than just financial returns. How do we make sure our portfolio is balanced between the fun products but more better for you and good for you products? How do we make sure we create a company that does the right thing by the environment, water use, plastics recycling, reducing the carbon footprint, supporting our farmers, and more importantly, and I'd say most importantly, how do we take the employees we have and make sure that when they come to PepsiCo to make a living, they can also have a life? So we wanted to provide all the support systems to make families, women in particular, feel like PepsiCo's the place I want to come to work in. So all of these take time. I wanted to get that journey well on its way, and it's that inner drive that kept me going for a decade, or more than a decade. Look, very early in my time at PepsiCo, I decided that I was going to be one of the guys, but I was also going to be a woman. So I was not going to allow them to push me around, which used to happen quite often. And the second thing is I had two daughters. My first one was about 8 or 9 years when I came to PepsiCo. My second one was 9 months old when I joined PepsiCo.
Wow.
And so, and I was in the middle of this large-scale transformation of the company from 94 to 2000, working 24/7. So basically, I decided that come, like 5 o'clock, my kids are allowed to come to work and hang around. They're allowed to play, they're allowed to sleep in my office, do whatever. That's the price of having me work at PepsiCo, all right? And it comes down to, if you establish a niche for yourself that you're competent and make yourself indispensable based on competence, what can they do without you? If they didn't want me because they didn't want kids running around, so get somebody else. Get a guy who couldn't do the job as well. So I was okay with that. When Steve Reinemund became the CEO in 2000, I had a daughter in boarding school at that time and one daughter in Sacred Heart. And if the boarding school called and said, hey, we have a problem, we need you to come, and my husband was traveling and I had to pick up the little daughter, he'd say, tell you what, I'll go to the boarding school, you go to Sacred Heart or the other side. And he always helped me out, always. And when you have bosses like that, it's a piece of cake. Look, it's not an opinion, what I'm going to tell you. It's fact. Just think about it. Having a kid and having to manage through their life, those checklists, the home, that is a full-time job. Whether you like it or not, it's a full-time job. I talk to so many stay-at-home parents. They are just inundated with the amount of work they have to do. Going to work is a full-time job, whatever job you do, because you're working in a pyramid. As you move up the pyramid, people are eliminated. And now with so many technologies that are coming in, you've got to be a lifelong student. And with productivity, people are being shed very fast. And so you've really got to double down and work even harder to move up the pyramid. That is more than a full-time job.
Yeah.
Now, compound that with the fact that many of us have aging parents and we may have to take care of them. That adds a little bit of stress. And on top of that, the fourth area is not a stress, but it's a fact. If you have a spouse, the spouse demands attention too. And as you move up the pyramid, they demand more attention. And so, the fact of the matter is, how do you balance all of these priorities? So at that time, you have to choose husband, kids. How do you do this? So always the kids won out because, they're high on the list. So what can I say? But you know what? The good news, I'm still with the same husband. He's a good man. I tell you, he's a good man. I couldn't be married to me. Well, here's the problem. If you want to have kids and a job, you've got to start thinking about the cohort group that you want to move up with. This is a real issue. See, when you graduate from business school, you graduate with the class. If you want to stay with the class and move up, and constantly think about the group you're moving up with, you're going to have to really think about, do you have your kids before you go to business school or after you come to work? Because if you have young kids and you don't have a fantastic support system, we can talk about what that means, a fantastic support system, you will end up making some trade-offs at work. You will, because it is brutal. I mean, look, just when you think everything is going well, you'll get that call saying the kid's ill or they want their mommy. Unfortunately, they always want their mom. No, fortunately, they always want their mommy. Fortunately, they always want their mommies, okay? The number of calls I've gotten, I want my mommy. Okay, fine, mommy's coming. And I'm going to tell you guys, I live 15 minutes away from work. When my kids had the flu, even though we had my mother living with us or babysitters, I would zip home every 2 or 3 hours and make sure that temperature was okay, they were given their medication, they'd had a soup or something to eat, and I'd zip back. So the kids knew that I was always there. In a moment's notice I could get to them. But I think that if we don't put aside what our normal expectations are for moving up the pyramid and decide how we're going to balance children and work, or we're going to have the children, but we're going to have family living with us because to supervise the daycare worker, because leaving children with not highly qualified childcare workers is a challenge by itself. That's a whole discussion that needs to happen in society for women today. We need you in the workplace, because if you're not in the workplace, productivity of the country is not very good, because women are today getting more than 50% of the college degrees, 57% of the top grades. So we need women in the workplace. But millennial women, we also want you to have 2.1 kids per person, because that's a replacement rate. Today we're at 1.6, not a good number to be at. Now at 1.6, we're going to have to do something serious to make sure the population is replaced the right way. But we can't expect you to have those kids if we don't give you the support system. Yeah. So one of the things, I'd like to get to a point where when a woman has a child, we actually send her a letter saying, thank you for your service to the country. Because that's what it is. Thank you for your service to the country. So instead it is like, oh my God, you can do it. You can make your checklist. You've got to figure out a way to have your family and come to work. It doesn't work.
Yeah.
So I think this is a real issue that as a country, as companies, as communities, families, societies, we have to figure out a sensible way to come together and come up with true policy options and start working on this.